First, we'll be talking about the functions and the chemical or mechanical digestion in the digestive system. The mouth plays a significant role in human communication and breathing, but its primary function is being the first part of the digestive system that receives food and moistens the food with saliva. The mouth's purpose is to prepare food for further digestion in the stomach and the small intestine. The mouth is also in charge of the mechanical digestion of food and the chemical digestion of starch. The primary function of your esophagus is to carry food and liquid from your mouth to your stomach. The esophagus is a muscular tube about 8 inches long, squeezing food with rhythmic muscle contractions called peristalsis. Food is passed through the esophagus and is a pathway to digestion. A form of mechanical digestion occurs, which is the food breaking down into smaller pieces to travel to the stomach. The stomach is a muscular, hollow organ that holds food while it is being mixed with stomach enzymes. Its main function includes being a temporary food storage and to pass broken down food to the small intestine. The stomach involves both mechanical and chemical digestion. Chemical digestion is involved of proteins, while mechanical digestion is the stomach churning and grinding food into a substance called chyme. The liver functions to keep blood concentrations of nutrients and hormones to be constant, regulate interconversions of nutrients, produce bile, destroy old red blood cells, produce urea, manufacture plasma proteins, and manufacture cholesterol. It is also an accessory organ, assisting in the functionality of other organs in the digestive system. In the liver, a digestive juice called bile is made to help digest fats and some vitamins. This is mechanical digestion, as bile emulsifies lipids. The gallbladder sits under the liver and stores the bile that the liver creates. It also does not directly help with digestion, but when digesting fats, the stomach secretes a substance that stimulates the gallbladder to contract and release bile, which helps digest fats by emulsifying them. Bile consists of bile acid, cholesterol, phospholipids, and proteins. The gallbladder has no chemical or mechanical digestion, simply just to store bile and release it into the small intestine where it will be broken down further there. The pancreas is important for digesting food and managing your use of sugar for energy after digestion. It produces enzymes to break down sugars, fats, and starches. Additionally, the pancreas produces hormones that regulate blood sugar and appetite. In digestion, the pancreas makes pancreatic juices called enzymes. The components of pancreatic juices are hydrolytic enzymes, which are made of pancreatic amylase, trypsin, lipase, nuclease, nucleotidase, and sodium bicarbonate. These enzymes break down sugars, fats, and starches. This is called chemical digestion. The small intestine has 3 parts: the duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. These parts help to further digest foods coming from the stomach, completing the chemical digestion of proteins, carbs, and lipids. As well, it absorbs unit molecules into blood or lymph. The majority of chemical digestion occurs in the small intestine. Digestive chyme from the stomach passes through the pylorus and into the duodenum. The duodenum is the site of major chemical digestion of proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids. Finally, the duodenum and ileum complete chemical digestion and absorb nutrients into circulatory or the lymphatic system. The large intestine has 3 primary functions: to reabsorb water from indigestible food matter, produce and absorb vitamins such as vitamin K, and forming and propelling feces toward the rectum for elimination. The large intestine includes the colon, rectum, and anus, consisting of one long tube that continues from the small intestine and turns food waste into stool. Unlike the small intestine, the large intestine produces no digestive enzymes. Chemical digestion is completed in the small intestine before the chyme reaches the large intestine. Next, we'll be talking about proteins in the digestive system.
Proteins are not chemically digested by the saliva in the mouth. However, they are mechanically digested and broken up by the teeth. Next, the food containing the protein is pushed down the esophagus to reach the stomach. Once the food reaches the stomach, the acid formed by the stomach, called hydrochloric acid, and the enzyme protease break down the proteins into smaller amino acid chains. Next, the food moves to the small intestine, where the amino acid chains are broken down by enzymes created by the pancreas, called trypsin, chymotrypsin, and carboxypeptidase. From there, they become individual amino acids. Finally, the small intestine absorbs the amino acids and they are sent into the bloodstream. The waste travels through the large intestine down to the anus for removal.
Next is carbohydrates in the digestive system.
During the digestion of carbohydrates, the mouth breaks down the food mechanically, and saliva containing amylase breaks down the sugars in the carbohydrates. Next, the food containing carbohydrates passes through the esophagus, which pushes the food down towards the stomach. Next, the chewed up food, now known as chyme, goes into the stomach. There, it will mix with stomach acid, which kills the bacteria in the chyme and makes it ready for further digestion. Next, the chyme moves to the small intestine. The small intestine produces lactase to break down the lactose, sucrase to break down the sucrose, and maltase to break down the maltose. This breaks the sugars down into monosaccharides, or single sugars. The small intestine is able to absorb some of these sugars. Once they're absorbed, they are stored in the liver. Some, such as glucose, enter the bloodstream instead. The remaining waste is broken down and passes through the large intestine to reach the anus for removal.
Next is nucleotides in the digestive system. While we eat food, it is mechanically broken down in the mouth by the teeth, and then it is mixed with saliva produced by the salivary glands. It is then moved down the esophagus into the stomach using peristalsis, as it squeezes the food traveling downwards. In the stomach, the particles are broken down by the gastric juice and its high acidity. The enzymes in the stomach, pepsin, however, does not have an effect on nucleic acids. The stomach churns and pushes the chyme down to the pyloric sphincter to the small intestine. This is the main place for digesting nucleic acids. The pancreas sends a special enzyme called pancreatic nucleases into the duodenum section of the small intestine, and this is where the breakdown of nucleic acids begin. The DNA and RNA are digested, and the nucleic acids are broken down to the nucleotides. Then, enzymes from the intestinal epithelium, such as nucleotidase, break the nucleotides down to create nucleosides. These are then broken down by the nucleodases and the phosphates, which are also from the intestinal epithelium. At the end, we are left with a nitrogenous base, sugars, and phosphates. These can be absorbed through the alimentary canal walls. These are transported by carriers across the bilious epithelium via active transport. They can then enter the bloodstream. Finally is lipids in the digestive system. The first step in the digestion of triglycerides and phospholipids begin in the mouth as lipids encounter saliva. Lingual lipase, an enzyme, is released in saliva but is not yet activated. When the triglycerides in saliva are swallowed and enter the stomach, it activates the lingual lipase enzymes, and the stomach releases gastric lipase. These then break down into triglycerides into diglycerides and free fatty acids. These enter the small intestine as large fat or lipid masses. The small intestines break them down using bile salts from the liver stored in the duodenum and stored in the gallbladder, which is an emulsifier, which then coats the outside of the droplets. After all this, the large fat droplets are finally broken into smaller fat droplets, which increases surface area. An enzyme released from the pancreas called pancreatic lipase into the stomach and breaks down the fats into free fatty acids and monoglycerides. These are then formed with bile salts to form micelles and transport and then are then absorbed into enterocyte cell membranes. In the cell, the fatty acids and monoglycerides come together again to form triglycerides and are coated in lipoprotein. The lipoprotein, called chylomicron, enter into lacteals and transport through lymphatic vessels and enter the bloodstream where they are delivered to the liver, fat, and muscle tissue. Your liver makes a powerful digestive juice called bile. Next, the bile passes to the gallbladder, which concentrates and stores it for later use. Bile helps break down the food you eat. Bile's most important role is breaking down fats. This is the hardest part of foods to digest. Carbohydrates and proteins tend to break down more easily. Fats need more chemical interaction in order to be changed into energy. When you digest fatty foods, your gallbladder releases bile. This digestive juice passes down a narrow tube, the cystical duct. It goes straight into the first section of your small intestine, just underneath your stomach, the duodenum. There, the strong chemicals go to work. They break down fatty bits into a liquid form that you can digest.